So a couple things to set this up. We've been talking a lot about our platform, how we capture data, how we can mask it as we capture it, and then send it to where it needs to be and open it up for use by data consumers. I just heard a point from you that I want to clarify. This data masking works the best when it's running against our virtual copies and allows us to handle replication, stuff like that. However, you can also mask physical data systems with it, right? So you can run the masking part on its own without the data capture and virtualization stuff, which will, and frankly, that's how we address data sources that we don't currently support for virtualization, right? So we can absolutely mask all the RDS databases, Aurora. What was the one you were asking about?
There's a bunch. Postgres.
I don't know, you name it. Like we can connect to those things. We can mask them where they sit right now. It turns out there are some big benefits to doing it on top of the virtualization platform. I'll touch on that in just a sec, but it's a very powerful masking tool. We can mask lots of sources. It's very scalable too. So we can mask lots of data in a relatively short period of time. Data masking is not a new technology, right? There's a lot of data masking companies that have been around for a while. And on some level, what we're doing is not that different, but we do it faster, we can touch more sources, and then we have some unique aspects to ours. Yeah, go ahead.
Before you go down this deep path with data masking, could you just at a very high level summarization, so I'm looking at things above, kind of from the top end of it, if you will, which is, what are the core reasons why people are leveraging Delphix? So it might be, masking might be one particular reason why. What are maybe the top 3 or 4?
Yeah, that's great. That's fair enough. So
because for me, I'd be more interested in knowing what those are and then decide from those which may be going down into, as opposed to just focusing on masking, we run out of time and can't talk about the other things.
Okay. I'll touch on that, although there's enough interest in the data masking specifically that I definitely want to touch on that a little bit more. But I would say generally that Delphix is solving a data management problem, right? So if you're a large enterprise, you have lots of data sets, they're getting bigger all the time. You have a real problem with how am I getting that data in the hands of the folks that need it? So Patrick talked at the beginning about data consumers and their need to get quality data quickly in order to do their jobs and for the organization to move faster on application development projects and stuff like that. And but at the same time, you've got the data operators whose job it is not to lose any data and to make sure that it's not stolen by anybody and stuff like that. And so the data management platform that we provide, we call it the dynamic data platform, is doing both things, right? So how do you make data readily available to the people that need it to do their job without creating more risk for your company? And I think at the most basic level, that's what our platform does really well. We've been talking about different aspects of it today, but in order to do that, you've got to have a centralized platform where you can pull all of your production data into. You've got to be able to apply policy to it to mask it and secure it so you can hand a copy to a developer without being concerned about how they're going to use it.
So I feel like we're kind of rehashing maybe some of the stuff that Patrick mentioned earlier. So let me be more specific.
Yeah.
What are the 3 or 4 features or functions that are reasons why people go after Delphix? So the masking is a core piece. What are the 3 or 4 features or functions? So don't go to the motherhood and apple pie.
Okay.
We covered that. Get to
let's be real specific. I am trying to enable a agile development team who's building the latest version of my application. Right now, they're really struggling.
So is Oracle. So is Oracle. What's unique about Delphix? Forgive me for being a little aggressive here, but just in the interest of time, I'm really trying to get you to focus on what are the differentiators for Delphix that are what customers are gravitating to and really kind of leveraging, like masking.
Right, like masking. But what I was about to say was that in order to enable those developers, what Oracle can't do is give you a full copy of the production data set for each developer that they can manipulate independently, right? Self-service. So self-service access for developers is a thing a lot of companies are coming to Delphix for. And in order to do that, you need to be able to create a lot more copies. So you need some of the virtualization stuff that we've been talking about. In order to do it, you also have to secure the data set before you expose it to them, which is why people are so interested in masking as part of that too. So So for data masking, let's see, I mentioned you can do it against physical copies. It works without the virtualization stuff. It's even more powerful when you are masking on top of the data platform as well. Just in terms of how it works, let me show you a quick example, right? So this is the interface for our data security users. This is where you design masking policies and then apply it to your data sets. And so, for example, here I've got a one that I've log in again, created on an Oracle database. And the way it works is you create a connector from our software to that database. That just says, here's how you log into the database, right, with a user that has access to the schema. And then we do a profile of it. And so we analyze the schema to try and figure out where is the sensitive data in this thing. I did that earlier just to save some time, and so I wanted to show the results of that. So on my little demo database, it analyzed the schema of this little employee application and said, okay, we've got some tables over here, you've got some column names here, and these are the things that we think have sensitive information in them. Sorry, let me scroll up to the top so you can see that bit too. So you can see the column names. These are algorithm domains that we've chosen, and we're saying, look, this looks like a phone number, for example. We recommend that you use the algorithm that Delphix ships with for masking phone numbers, okay? So the idea is we're helping you identify where is the sensitive data in your application, and then also recommending algorithms that we ship with in order to mask that data.
So, but when you use the word recommending, that implies that you can override these recommendations.
Yes, absolutely. So this is a recommendation. You may decide that, you know what, I don't want to use string randomizer for the medical record thing. I want to do something more specific, right? That says, hey, Delphix, preserve the first 4 characters, but then mask randomly the last 8 or something like that. So this is a really flexible system, but the recommendations are important because with a big schema, it's difficult to get started, quite honestly, right? You got to be like, man, I don't even, sensitive data, I've got hundreds of tables in my application, like I don't even know how to get started. This profiler is an excellent way, and it will catch about 90% of the stuff that's in there. Somebody still needs to go through this and be like, all right, are there additional fields we want to mask? Do we want to change some of these algorithms recommended? But it will save a majority of the work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that is a really useful feature.
Where in the process does masking take place? Is it masked prior to it being loaded onto the Delphix platform, or is it somewhere else in the process?
So it depends a little bit on how you deployed this. In most cases, when you're using the entire platform, we will pull production data onto the platform first, then mask it, and then per policy decide, are we delivering masked data or clear text data to some user or something like that. If you're using the Delphix masking standalone, then it's just a masking exercise, right? Yeah.
This might be a dumb question. I'm looking at the list here, and I don't
Yeah.
know if it's just what you
Sure,
with,
just a demo, but go ahead.
Department name. Was
Yeah.
that something that you actually have a standard randomization for? The reason I ask is things like that. When
Right.
you do string randomizer, is it going to take the IT department all 10 instances that's in the database and
Right.
use a different string? Or will
Honestly,
it
this
replace
is
them all?
probably a good one to change, right? In most cases, I would leave department name as is.
Yeah, it'd be
right?
crazy. I don't know why.
I would change this to the null one down here and
But
say
certain things you might want consistency in the randomization,
yeah,
right? Is it possible to do that?
it absolutely is.
Okay.
Matter of fact, one of the big benefits of the way that we mask is that it's consistent. What I mean by that is we're going to mask, let's say my name, Jeff Zeisler is my first and last name. It's going to mask my name to a random name. It's pretty funny, actually. It pulls from this list of random names that it has, right? And it changes mine. Last time it changed mine to Starbuck or something like that, right? But it's still a name, right? So the application reads it. It doesn't break the application. But every time it masks my name, it masks it to Starbuck.
Will it mask every Jeff to Starbuck?
And it will mask every Jeff to Starbuck.
Good. Okay.
And if Jeff is in Oracle for one application and in Mongo for another application, it will mask it consistently across those data source types as well, which is important for a lot of your applications, right? If it's talking to more than one data source, those things need to look the same later on. So that consistency is built into this, and it's an important way to handle it. The last thing I'll say is that somebody asked earlier about, is masking permanent or can it be reversed? And most of these algorithms are permanent. Once they've been masked, it's like you can't unmask them.
So that was, excuse me, that was me, and I was trying to get at, is it a hashing function like a SHA-1 or a SHA-256, but you're saying it's more of like an obfuscation.
It's more of an obfuscation, but the algorithm for how we pick what to obfuscate it to uses some hashing as part of it. I'm not going to go into the details of exactly how it works. It is, we've gone through this with a lot of security experts, and it's a very solid,
it's
can't be reversed type mask.
Strong
I would have
cryptography.
a concern around the fact that since it hashes, say, the name to the same thing consistently, you could do an analysis of frequency to find common names and reverse what the value
What
Is
the
it-
original was.
Is it different between customers?
So you're right, that's a concern. That's one of the things we've worked out with security. So the algorithms do work in such a way that we end up hashing the same name, more than one name to the same target value, so that it can't be reversed, right? Like, you're right, otherwise you'd be like, I'm just gonna go through and I know Tom is the most common name, so I'm gonna look for the most common result and I'm gonna back it out. But the algorithm's more complicated than that, and it actually prevents people from doing that.
You had a
So
salt or
Tom
something.
and Jeff. So Tom and Jeff might map to Starbucks.
That's right.
Now, this is kind of tangential to this, but as we're making these copies, even if we're masking, I'd imagine that for your customers who might have European,
Yep.
are all the database copies in scope for like GDPR?
Yeah. GDPR is a big driver of this business for us right now.
Is it?
Yeah, actually it's the entire platform, right? Because it's not just that I need to mask it, but remember Patrick said earlier, like, I got to mask the data, but like there are EU laws that says if the data was created in Germany, it can't leave Germany, right? So the production data, that is. So if you want to send it to an AWS data center that's in France or something like that, you've got to mask all the sensitive data first before you ship it, and then you need to be able to keep track of in your management system, how do I prove to somebody that the production data stayed in Germany, and the only thing that was replicated was the fully anonymized version of this thing. Delphix can report on all that stuff, right? So you can hand an auditor, well, here's the report of my replication and the masking jobs that were run prior, and here's how I'm going to show you that we're in compliance with GDPR. So yeah, it's a big driver for this platform for sure.
One thing I'm a bit confused by is there was a mention by Keith about using this for a DR purpose to create copies in the cloud. But if you're doing this level of masking, which is not reversible, surely the data then becomes unusable in that context?
It's a good question. Recall that Delphix is capturing the production data as it is. You are masking it, and depending on policy rules that you set up, you can only replicate the masked version. If you were going to use Delphix for DR, you would also need to replicate the unmasked version, because you're right, you need that to create a DR copy of it.
But I can mask it on the other end.
Absolutely. You
So
could have both versions.
I can use it as my primary stream for replication to get the DR. And then if I want to use my DR facilities also as a source, I can then present it as masked data from that point.
Well, that's double the penalty, isn't it? One copy that's masked and another copy that's unmasked.
The industry standard, which is the big voice by body, is that
Mike.
clear text and the mixed text. Sorry, the industry standard is that the clear text and the mixed text data sets must live in the secure perimeter. The ciphertext is the one that leaves the perimeter. It doesn't matter where you put that secure perimeter. You could put it on your DR. You could put it wherever you want. But that's how you make sure you don't duplicate effort. You keep those, and though both of those, by the way, can be virtual. That's the whole idea.
And then from a enterprise data priority perspective, I care way more about my DR than I do my DR copy than my dev copy. So I'll spend a little extra to host that somewhere else because I'm getting basically two values for one.
So what does the process look like to make a custom algorithm yourself, or can you not do that?
You can create custom algorithms. I should say you can work with Delphix to create custom algorithms. So
There's no front end to do it as the end user.
yeah, it's basically writing some special code that you can put in the system. We do this fairly regularly with our customers, right? The thing Patrick was talking about earlier about address masking, where it's like got to be a valid address in the same zip code. That was pretty special, and we had to work with a customer to implement that.
So what would the turnaround time be for that? Let's say it
It's
came out
actually
you
pretty
with a-
fast. We can do it. I mean, depends on how much testing we need to do, but actually writing the code is relatively straightforward. And in fact, eventually we're going to be exposing that to customers and partners, right? We want to create an SDK where you can create your own custom algorithms without a bunch of help from us. Right now, it still requires some handholding from us,
Right.
but it's not that hard to do. I just wanted to highlight, you remember we talked about, so we find these things, we'll recommend some things, but then you may tweak them, right? This is an example, right? It's like, okay, the algorithm that I want to use for masking this phone number, I don't want to use this thing that Delphix ships with that out of the box. I want to use something different. Maybe it's a custom one that we uploaded. But this is how you would do that, right? There's a lot of great out-of-the-box masking algorithms that Delphix ships with. It's why this is easy to use. And the other thing I was going to say is that for some applications, we actually ship with full pre-baked profiles. So this is for third-party software, but for like SAP, for example, if you want to mask SAP, we have an out-of-the-box profile that tells you exactly where all the sensitive data is in a given version of SAP and just lets you rip through all your records. It doesn't handle custom modules that you might be running, but that's usually a small percentage. So for certain big applications that are really hard to develop a masking profile for, we've done that heavy lift up front, and you can license that stuff from us so you can get started much more quickly. Okay, then the next thing I want to transition to is like, okay, so this is kind of how the masking works. I mentioned it's very scalable. It scales horizontally. We can mask billions of rows in a reasonable amount of time. And the neat thing is, though, if you're running this on top of the data platform, what you'll be masking is you'll create a virtual copy of your production database, which has the original prod data. We'll mask it. Now you've got this secure version, and because of how our virtualization works, I can make 50 copies of the secure version right away, right? I don't have to rerun the masking job for every virtual copy that I create. So that makes this very efficient, right? We can gather data, mask it, and then make that basically create copies that are children of the secure data set for everybody that's going to use it. And from a timing standpoint of how quickly can I get the latest production data that's been scrubbed in the hands of the people who need to use it, the turnaround time is much quicker compared to doing this in a more traditional way, which would be to stand up a backup and then mask it and have to do that for each individual copy. And then I'll just lastly say, if you couple that with the replication policies that allow you to set rules on, we're only allowed to replicate the secure data to some other site. It allows you to, that could be the cloud, like Woody talked about. It could also just be another zone in your data center. So this is pretty common for financial services customers. Production is like the red zone. It's like and like, man, you got to have, top secret clearance to be able to like touch a server in there. And then they have other zones which are lower security, which is where all the non-prod stuff runs. They'll actually set up Delphix replication between the secure zone and the the green zone or whatever. And within their own data center, they'll replicate only the mass data from one to the other. That way they know that every copy that's created in the green zone is always masked all the time. There is no risk of data breach in the green zone. And that's really attractive to a lot of our customers too.
What sort of security hardening has been done on the Delphix appliance if there's potential for it to contain sensitive data?
It's a great question. A lot, right? So for every financial service and government customer, right, we basically get put through the ringer by their InfoSec team. Actually, you know who put us through the ringer the most was a personal computer manufacturer located down the road a little ways. But they're so crazy about security, they literally came back with like 15 R changes that we had to make to the software before they would accept us into their data centers. And so you're right. We are now a data security platform. That means that we have to have, we get scanned all the time by everybody's InfoSec team. We have development best practices, Colin, we think a lot about security and stuff like that. So the answer is, we get tested on this a lot, and it's a requirement of our business to be able to pass those tests. So we are a very secure, our software itself is highly secure. I think we should keep moving unless there's more questions, because I want to make sure we have time for size. So is there anything else that we can touch on? I will be at dinner tonight too, so we can talk as much as you guys want about data masking at that point too.
This was all around databases specifically. What about
a good
data
question.
masking for non-database?
Yeah, so Delphix can currently mask some of the NoSQL platforms, but it also just masks files, right? So you've got a file with data in it. You can point our data masking at that. It will do its best to determine if you've got, if it's comma delimited or whatever's in that file. In some cases, though, if you've got a really complicated XML file or something like that, the policy creation will take a little bit of work, right? We'll have to work with somebody who understands the structure of that thing to be able to figure out where the fields are and stuff like that. But once that's been defined, we can mask it over and over again really quickly. So.